You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. I'm Jill Waterman, the show's creative producer. I'm also host of our new monthly series, Picturing World Cultures. Photographers have a magical ability to transport us to hidden worlds, gaining intimate access to facets of society that would otherwise go unnoticed. This knack for knocking doors and the tenacity to win over resistant subjects is at the heart of our chat with Mexican photographer Marcela Taboada, whose long-term documentary projects offer revealing glimpses into settings that are off-limits to the public. We also discuss the unique challenges of pursuing a photography career as a single mother raising 2 young children, and hear of lessons Marcela learned from seeing aspects of her own story reflected in the lives of her subjects. Born and raised in the city of Puebla, Marcela Taboada has been based in the southern city of Oaxaca since 1986. After initial studies in graphic design, she became drawn to photographing underrecognized communities for long-term stories that let her see backstage. Marcela has received both national and international accolades, including a Hasselblad Foundation Scholarship, a National Geographic All Roads Photography Award, and Mexico's most prestigious art grant, the National System of Art Creators Award, which she received twice. Her photographs have been featured in solo and group exhibitions within Mexico, the United States, Europe, and Asia. Marcela has taught photography at universities, in high schools, and in specialized workshops. Additionally, for 16 years, she served as producer for American photographer Mary Ellen Mark's annual Oaxaca photo workshops. Marcela Taboada, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for your invitation. To me, it's a real honor to be in this podcast.
Great speaking with you today. So I want to start with the idea that your photographs let you see backstage. It's such a beautiful statement. Can you tell me more about this?
Yes, this story began when my third sister got married. So my first sister couldn't come to her wedding. So I promised her to photograph all what is going on around her wedding. So I started to photograph her when she woke up, when she drank her chocolate milk, so she can have a lot of energy. So I photographed everything that was surrounding that day in my house, even with my father, even the hairdresser who came to make her styling for the wedding, the makeup, even for my mom, etc., etc. And suddenly my sister told me, Marcela, I need to go to the bathroom. But she was already dressed up with the big dress. So she told me, don't photograph this. And I followed her because she was having the help of my mom and the wedding dress designer. And I follow her and I make that photograph that I love in the bathroom. So I was photographing everything, but that was the promise for my sister. And then when we went to this place that the wedding was, I couldn't photograph the church that much because I was also in the ceremony. I was a bridesmaid.
Yeah.
I was one of those bridesmaids, so I couldn't stand up and photograph that. Okay. But anyway, so when we went just to the place where we're going to have the fiesta, the party,
Mm-hmm.
I went to the kitchen, photographed the chefs, and photographed the people that were preparing the food. So I really loved that, to be behind the scenes. And then my sister was very grateful to see her third sister getting married because she couldn't be in the wedding.
And this was actually before you became a photographer by trade.
Yes, before that.
Yeah,
But I have a camera. I have a Canon, a small point and shoot, and I photographed that very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I really was like a professional photographer because my sister hire a photographer. And I remember that this guy was having a Hasselblad. And when I saw the Hasselblad, I said, oh, that's a nice camera. But I couldn't even pay attention about that.
And your photos, I'm sure, were very distinctive and unique.
Yes.
So, delving deeper into your family history, you have a childhood memory about your great uncle, who was a self-taught astronomer. He built an observatory next to your family home, and you and your siblings used to go there to see the stars. That sounds like something out of a movie.
First of all, this great uncle, Domingo, he and all his siblings, all males, used to live in a farm far away from Puebla, very close to the volcanoes. You know, we have very beautiful volcanoes, the Popocatépetl and the Ixtlacihuatl. So in 1910, they saw the Halley comet. Can you imagine those days, the sky with all these stars and the Halley comet every day? So he became a self-taught astronomer. And so the years fly, and then he started to be serious on that. And he invested whatever he earns in astronomy. And then he built an astronomy place, and he started to contact other astronomers. So he made his own observatory at his home. And my father was very close to him. So he also participated on all that. So I remember my dad sometimes was asking us, who wants to come and see the stars? And of course, I was the first one to raise my hand. I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I remember Domingo, he was tall and his personality really impacted you. So I remember him opening that big dome manually, you know? And then Domingo was like a Frankenstein because he was opening the observatory with a crank and all this electricity going out. And then he just pointed the big telescope. And I remember my dad used to raise me, and I was looking at Saturn and the ring, and also sometimes Jupiter and the moons around. I was really fascinated, being very lucky to see that as a little girl. And then Domingo and my dad started to observe the satellites. You know, when all these satellites started to be launching from the Earth to the atmosphere. And so they report the trajectory of the satellites to the NASA. So on the top of the roof of my house, they were telescopes. So I remember in those days, the young students were dressing with suits and the cravat and all that. They were very elegant. These guys were in black. So for me, they were the men in black, climbing onto the stairs of the roof, and they were observing the trajectory of these satellites, and they reported to NASA. So in the afternoons, when my father was not around, me and my siblings used to go upstairs, pull out the protection of these telescopes, and we started to look with all these filters because they were the yellow filter, the red filter, but it was forbidden because they were very professional telescopes, little ones, but we can see the craters of the moon. So that for me, I think that was the approach to the optics and the lenses without having idea.
What influence did those early memories have on your imagination, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I was fascinated just to see these planets without having any idea that other kids have this opportunity. But in a way, I wanted to become an astronaut. My friends wanted to be like a stewardess. I really wanted to be an astronaut without knowing that I have to study physics. So I said, no, this is not for me.
Also, when you were a teenager, your father introduced you to cameras and photography by giving you his camera to photograph family trips.
Yes, I was 15 years old, and my father also loves to do film. And he told me, Marcela, I'm going to be doing film, and you're going to be taking care of the camera. And he just taught me very simple. It was a Minolta camera, the T01, very simple. And he showed me how to freeze the movement, but I have no idea. I just follow his instructions, and it was a E6 process, transparencies, because during those days, people used to do the transparency film when they do trips. It was easier to show to your friends or a slideshow with transparency. So when he showed the whole family that trip, it was in Miami, a show with skiers. And so I trapped when they were like flying in the middle of the ocean, and I froze the movement. And I said, wow. But then my father also loved to do dark room. So he was a businessman, but from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., he used to change the bathroom of the house into a dark room. But one day he asked me, I don't know why he chose me, because we were many siblings. So he said, Marcela, please come. So I went into the dark room. That was a bathroom. And he said, I have to go. So just from the fixer, I just only have to watch the photographs. Okay. And he said, so you put all the photographs as soon as you watch them and don't touch. And of course I touch. So I put a negative, and I don't know how, but I print a photograph, and I was amazed.
Wow, you actually made a print and put it through the developer and all that?
Because the trays were in order, right? So he told me, this is the developer, this is the stop bat, and this is the fixer. I remember it was a Kodak paper, like 5x7 size. And I was like, wow, I could print one.
That must have been so satisfying.
I mean, it was magic to see the image coming in. But there, I was not planning to become a photographer. Photography came to me, called me. Like the nun says, it was a call. So I listened the call of the God of the light.
So fast forward a bit. Even though you didn't want to be a photographer, you studied photography in college. And then you started documenting your great aunt after she was placed in a nursing home. How did that come about?
Yes, it was when I finished the university. In fact, I learned photography there because I studied graphic arts and design at the University of Las Americas in Puebla, which in a way was a very cosmopolitan university. There were students from all parts of the world, which was unusual, especially in Puebla, because Puebla was a very close society. So there were a lot of students around from India, from the US, everywhere. And there was a big, beautiful dark room. It was enormous. So I studied there, and I have different choices to pick. Like if I want to be a painter, if I want to learn etching or silkscreen or lithography. So I said, no, photography, because I have the basis with my father. So my teacher, her name was Sandra Vasquez, and she was really very good teaching me, because it was black and white, and she was very strict on really become good printers in photography with the gray colors and all of this stuff. Though I really learned very good darkroom with her, but I was still not wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a graphic designer. So when I just finished college, my grand aunt, for some reason, went to this nursing home that was for me very cruel because in Mexico we don't do this. I mean, all people go to your house, okay?
Right.
I mean, we told her because she has a lot of grandnieces. So we told her, call us and we can take you everywhere to the cinema, to the theater, whatever. So she used to be like that. We take her to the film or to do the beauty parlor, whatever she wanted. So then I got married. I moved to Oaxaca and I decided to visit her after 2 years. And I was shocked to see her in a very bad shape. So then I discovered that because she don't have the love, I mean, she has the care, but not the love, she started to be very
Mm-hmm.
sad in a way. And that's how I decided to photograph why this happened to her. And I asked them, can I photograph? Yes, you may. And I was like fish in the water because I have access to all this place, which was very beautiful Art Deco building. And I
Mm-hmm.
really started to
Mm-hmm.
do a serious body of work.
So, do you have any tips about making pictures that portray elderly people in a dignified manner?
Yes, of course, respect, have a big respect to these wise people. I mean, because they are wise, to respect them because they
Right.
have all this knowledge. And as Westerners, I mean, I can really feel it with the millennials, if we can speak about them, because they don't care. They don't care. And I
Mm.
really try to tell them, listen to them because they can give you, but they don't listen. Okay. And I said, you're very lucky to have
Mm.
your grandma, to have your grandpa. Even some generations have the grandfather and mother. And I said, enjoy them.
Besides photographing your great aunt in Puebla, you also continued this series after returning to Oaxaca. Isn't that right?
Yes, when I met Marilyn Mark, I met her when I have my second son, and I took her workshop because it was at the beginning when she started to come to Oaxaca. So I do her workshop and I photograph the nursing home in Oaxaca.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, because then I said, no, 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 I am like struggling with my children. They were little,
Mm-hmm.
uh, like toddlers. So I decided not to continue doing the nursing homes.
Mm-hmm. So let's shift gears and talk about your equipment. What types of cameras have you worked with over the years?
Well, when the film days, I used to have
Mm-hmm.
a Nikon, the F4, which was amazing camera, very heavy. And then when digital revolution started, I get a Nikon body as well because all my lenses were Nikon. And thanks to Nikon, I can do the change to digital because everything was the same. And then I saved money and I bought a Leica, the
Mm.
M6. Lovely camera. I love it, love it, love it. And then the middle format, my father helped me to get a used Hasselblad. So I started to do the Hasselblad. And at the end, I got a Sinar. But the Sinar I used only for copy work of art of
Ah,
painters, of painters.
for that's large format.
Exactly. It was 4x5, which I have still, but I don't use.
Mm. Photographing artwork was the beginning of your professional photography career?
No, Jill. I think
No?
that I started to, because suddenly I got married and then I got divorced and I became a single mom. And this is
Mm-hmm.
something that I want to say that we can do it. But I have a lot of opportunities to become like a Nat Geo photographer. but I could not.
Mm.
Even I was also introduced to become a magnum photographer, but I could not because I have my two kids, right? So for me, they
Hmm.
were more important because I need to give them a good education, at least something that I was there without abandoning them going to the world. So
Right.
I started to do more editorial work. Okay. So I work with different magazines in Mexico and like in the US, like international magazines. So for me, that's the professional work. But in the middle, I used to do my personal work.
Hmm.
So it's when I make the Women of Clay. The Women of Clay is very important body of work that I do because I was like falling apart when I got divorced, right, with my two little boys in each hand. And suddenly, when I went to visit for the first time these ladies in southern Mexico and to see how they were struggling to build their homes with any peso behind, it was a lesson of life to me
Mm.
because I was complaining that I was a single mom and crying to everybody. And then they really gave me a big lesson of life and they were building houses. So I said, I have to build my own house, my own life without the father around. And that's it. And I am not against their father, but it happened that he didn't support my kids. So I have to really be very tough on finding how to gain a life. So that's when I started also to do copy work with the
Hmm.
painters and the galleries hire me instead of hiring someone from Mexico City. I really knock doors. I have the equipment and I can do this. You don't have to hire someone around from Mexico. I live here and anytime I am here. So they started to give
Mm.
me lots of jobs. So I do copy work as well. But let me tell you something. I
Mm.
really admire those women who decided not to have children and they want to become photographers. Because,
Mm.
for example, with Mary Ellen Mark, she really wanted to photograph the world. So she was responsible on not having kids. And with me, because I didn't decide to become a photographer, so I have
You
kids.
decided to become a mother
Yes,
first.
so that's why I really reject to become a Magnum photographer or a Nat Geo photographer. I could not because I said, now who is going to take care of my kids?
But you still continued making pictures and doing personal work, like your series Women of Clay, about a group of women who needed to rebuild their homes after an earthquake. Can you give us some background on that?
Okay, so Women of Clay. Mm, I have an architect friend. His name is Juan Jose Santibáñez, and he's not from Oaxaca, the city. He's from La Mixteca, which is southern Mexico. And one day he came to Oaxaca and he was telling me about these women because we have an earthquake in
Mm.
1998 and that area really was destroyed. And also in the city of Oaxaca, some of the churches were destroyed and buildings, etc. Because Oaxaca is a place of earthquakes. So he told me that these women came to see him. Please, architect, help us to make our houses because they felt down, they felt apart. And he said, do you have the money? No, we don't. So he said, so how are you going to build? Please help us, help us. So they were knocking him doors like every month and they were insisting that much that he said, okay, so let's gonna start doing Adobe bricks. So when he told me the story, because he even couldn't believe that these women were going to build their houses, but he said, okay. So in a way, he tested them doing Adobe bricks with the earth that is around.
So he showed them how to make the pieces to construct homes.
Exactly. And also when he told me that, and he said, no, Marcela, I don't believe them. I'm not sure they can build their homes. And then I said, please, I want to go. Please, one day that you're going to be there, please invite me. Please, I want to go to that place. And these ladies, they were mixing the earth with some elements that Juan Jose was telling them to do. And I was fascinated. And I said, oh my goodness. And there were 8 women, because in that village, and mostly in those villages in the south of Mexico, there is a big population of men that emigrate to Mexico City, to Guadalajara, or to the US. So, in a way, this place is empty of young men. So they were like alone with no men around. So I can tell you that they built their houses with no help of men. And Jose really helped them to do all the elements around them. Like the bamboo came to do the ceiling and to do the walls with clay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this project is called The Women of Clay. And then they become very popular because the neighbor town went to see the architect. Please, we want to do our houses as the women of clay. So then he said, okay. And it also changes a little bit the way he was teaching, because then he started to have architect students to help them, because it's really very hard to them because it's the middle of the sun. And these women have children as well. So I really admire them 100%.
And so after he introduced you to these women, you started photographing them.
Yes, I have to be introduced to the priest. His name is Padre Santiago Rojas. So he was a priest of all these little small villages around. And I asked him permission, and he said, yes, yes, please, you are welcome to visit anytime. So thanks to him, I have this support. And then the women started to become my friends. So I do this body of work in 5 years.
Mm. And how much time would you spend photographing at any one point?
Yes, this town is 4 hours driving. Okay. So I used to pick weekends so I can leave my kids with friends. And then I used to go from Friday to Sunday. And then during vacation time, I stay longer with them. And during summer vacations, Hector, my husband, used to be with them in Puebla. And then I have more free time to stay there as long as I could.
How many homes did they build?
They built 12 homes, and they gave a surprise to the priest because they also built a home to him.
Wow.
Yes. And let me tell you one beautiful story, because suddenly at 8 p.m., I was in the home giving dinner to my kids and ready to sleep. And then I received the phone call from Julia. And Julia told me, Marcela, it's full moon. Okay, Julia. And then, well, we are going to cut the bamboo cane. Please come, because this is a good opportunity for you to photograph us. Now? Yes. And I said, but now? Yes, Marcela. So I really take the challenge. I let my kids sleep. I organize who can take them to school next day. So at 10 p.m., Jill, I drove along that highway that is weirdly, weirdly winding road. I arrived at 4 in the morning. The women of clay were waiting for me. I parked the car and then jumped into a truck. And we went to the river that is 1 hour away, and everything was quiet. It was the moon, so we have the moonlight, and they started like
Mm-hmm.
ants cutting the bamboo came in silence. I still remember the sound of the metal. Ding, 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 all the time in silence. They cut the bamboo they need to one house, to the ceiling of one house.
Mm-hmm.
And then they decided to go to the river and swim. And I have some beautiful photographs that I do in that day.
Mm-hmm.
And at 8, I
Mm-hmm.
was coming back to Oaxaca, to the city.
The next day.
Well, yes, the next early morning, because I have to go back to Oaxaca to just pick up my
Mm-hmm.
kids to school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very lovely. And I learned that during the full moon, the insects don't eat the bamboo cane because it's bitter to
Uh-huh.
them, to the insects. So that's how they can keep these bamboo canes in perfect right. They don't receive
Uh-huh.
the termites, these insects that eat
Right.
wood.
So that means that the bamboo stays bitter because it's cut during the full moon?
Exactly.
Wow. Fascinating.
Yes. It's very ancient knowledge that they cut the bamboo cane exactly during the full moon.
And how difficult was it to take pictures at night by the full
Well,
moon?
when we arrived to the place, it was 5 in the morning. So it was beginning to the sunrise. So the light was
Okay. Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And I was using the Leica 1.4
Mm.
lens.
So that must have been beautiful. Wow.
Yes, it was very beautiful moment. Yes, I was amazed that they work like ants, as I explained you, and at 7 in the morning they were done. So they decided to
Mm-hmm.
take a
Mm-hmm.
bath in the river because this bamboo cane grows exactly at the edge of the rivers.
So you became very much a collaborator in their whole process of building and construction. Were there other moments when they contacted you and asked you to come and told you something special was happening?
No, no, but I want to tell
No.
you that sometimes I was getting a little bit bored because everything was the same. Every time I go, it was the same. Women doing
Mm.
the Adobe bricks or building. So I wanted to go beyond that. So I started to photograph their daily life. And
Mm-hmm.
there is when I really think this body of work became more important to me because I was photographing who are these ladies, what they do
Right.
to support themselves. And it was really beautiful to be closer to their families, to the grannies, to their children, when they go to school, when they were cooking. Some of them to support themselves, they were sewing soccer balls,
Mm.
and they only can do 2 in a day.
Mm.
And they also
Wow.
doing palm hats.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, to be honest, that village was very poor when I was there. They have
Mm.
no drinking water, for example. They have to go far away to a closer river to get at least 2 buckets of water.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Now it's different.
Have you kept in touch with the women from this village?
Yes, I'm still in touch with them. In Oaxaca, they gave them money because now some architects admire these ladies. So I
Mm.
invited them when they received this award, they gave them money so they can finish their houses because some of them left the house with no doors, for example, or with no windows. And
Mm.
then I am in touch with Daisy. And Daisy now is like 20 years old. And she was a girl when I met her,
Mm.
but I haven't seen her. So I have to visit the
Mm.
village very soon.
Mm. That's a beautiful story.
It is. So that story to me is very important. I think with that, I
Mm-hmm.
learned a lot about how to approach to the subject, how to make a good composition, because it was the film days.
Right. Well, and how to really get behind the scenes and see backstage over an extended period of time.
Exactly. And the weather there is really terrible. It's like 38 centigrades, very hot, very hot in the middle of the day. But it's very small place, very small town, but it was a lesson to me.
Yeah.
I never complained after that because they are single mothers, as me.
Right. You saw something of your own life reflected through them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is a good time for us to take a short break. And when we return, we'll continue our conversation with Marcela Taboada about her long-term personal projects in Mexico. Stay tuned. I hope you're enjoying this chat with Marcela Taboada for my monthly series, Picturing World Cultures. Before we go back to the show, we'd like to ask you a little favor. If you enjoy this series or are a fan of our show in general, we'd love to hear about it. Please take a minute to post a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, the B&H Explora blog, or on our newest online destination, B&H Photos YouTube channel, under the podcast tab. We depend on listener feedback to help us make this podcast the kind of show you want to tune into. Also, for those of you who don't yet subscribe, regular updates from us are only a click away, and they're totally free. Please join us. We'd love to have you as part of our family. Okay, we're back with Marcela Taboada. Marcela, I want to ask you about your project Consecrated, documenting cloistered nuns in Mexico. What gave you the idea for that project?
What inspired this project is I was very curious about the life of these nuns. I remember every Saturday we have a big family lunch at home with grandmothers, and suddenly they were speaking about the discovery of a cloister nunnery, and all the time it was a mystery. And then one of my sisters, she's an architect, and she has a master's degree at the UNESCO to protect the heritage of Puebla. And then she worked for the government. And one day I was in Puebla and she told me, Marcia, did you bring your camera? Yes. Okay, come with me. So she took me to downtown Puebla, and every single step she told me, photograph this facade, photograph this building. And I said, where do you want all of these buildings? Because we are making a catalog. And she was describing what was that building about in the colony days. So everything was about the Catholic priest, okay? Because Puebla was founded when the Spanish came. The main goal was to Catholize all the native people. So they were the ones who were ruling during the colony days. And everybody were paying the taxes to them. So they own mostly all the buildings. So when we walk into some of the buildings, like churches, she taught me how to recognize a church from male order to female order, because they are different. When we went into the churches that were for the nuns monasteries, we came in and then photograph this and photograph that, and then photograph the choruses where they go up and play the organ and sing for the service, okay? But these ones were, the nuns were like hidden. And she told me, the nuns used to listen to the service there. And I said, really? And she said, yes, I can't believe that because this is their church. No, but it was forbidden. They could not. So I was more intrigued, okay? Because they were hiding. And I asked her, are they still there? In some of the churches, yes. In some of them, because we had a president that is very known in Mexico. I mean, and is Oaxacan. His name is Benito Juarez. And Benito Juarez decided to separate the clerk from the government. So he took all the clerk belongings for the government. So they became like civil buildings. But he kept, of course, the churches. So that's why it's a mystery, because mostly they disappear.
So most of the monasteries and convents have been converted to government buildings.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow.
But not the churches. The churches are kept, all of them. All of them.
And so have the amount of nuns and priests shrunk? Has that resulted in there not being so many religious people?
Well, I don't think that it happens immediately, because it was a privilege for the Spanish to at least have a daughter that becomes a nun. And to become a nun, they have also to give a dowry. And it was a piece of land or gold. So they were rich girls who goes to the monastery just because it was a privilege. And it's a beautiful story, really. I mean, the life of the nuns during the colony days, it's amazing. And because they have these orders that still are alive, they have more than 400 years old.
Right. So you're mentioning the Spanish tradition for a family to have a daughter who is a nun got adopted within Mexico because it's such a Catholic country?
Yes. Mexico is about a 90% Catholic country. Yes, everywhere you go, everywhere is a Catholic church, bells, festivities related to the Catholic Virgin, any saint. Yes, is really still alive.
How does that relate to Mexican traditions?
Yes, everywhere you go in Mexico, every village, we call it now original villages, they have a church. Everywhere they do have a Catholic church. And they are very respectful to the days that they have to respect, like Easter, for example, and all the festivities. In the pandemic, it was very special because it was very quiet. So there were no festivities. But as soon as it finishes, wow, they do more. I think they do more because they used to also do the tradition of the fireworks. So I think they do more than ever.
What is the tradition of the fireworks?
The tradition of the fireworks is to announce the main Catholic celebration or festivity. They announce it a week before. So you can listen fireworks all day long, all the time. It's very constant.
Wow.
Fireworks. For example, American people really get very nervous. What's going on? No, don't worry. Because for us, it's very normal.
So back to your project, photographing the nuns. How many different cloisters did you go to and how did you get access?
Okay, Jill. When my sister just finished explaining me everything, I said, I have to come to Puebla. I have really to photograph the nuns. So I asked for a grant. And the grant was given to me because no one has photographed cloister nuns. Nobody takes care of them. Okay. So I make a research and I found out that in Puebla there are 14 monasteries of cloistered nuns of different orders.
Just in Puebla.
Just in Puebla, yes.
Wow.
Do you want me to mention them?
Sure.
Let me see if I remember. Augustinians, Brigidettes, Clarisses, Conceptionists, Dominicans, Madres de la Cruz, Discalced Carmelites, and that's it, I think, because from those, for example, we have 3 Dominicans female monasteries, cloistered. From Discalced Carmelites, there are 2. From Clarisses, there are 2 as well. Madres de la Cruz is more contemporary. This monastery was founded in the 19th century. And the Brigidettes, it's only 1, and the Augustinians, it's only 1.
So the series that you did, were all the monasteries based in Puebla, or did you go to other regions of Mexico?
Well, Jill, going back to your question, the access was the most difficult access ever in my life. Because, okay, I have the grant, I have my camera, and I was knocking doors, and all the doors were shut in front of my nose. And, this grant was running, and months passes, and I was, what can I do? So I started to get contacts with my sisters. Do you know a priest? Please help me. I don't know how to have the access. So finally, I got the contact of the main bishop in Puebla. So I went there. I have a letter that was giving me the grant. Okay, so I went with him. Please, can you help me with a letter so I can have the access to photograph the nunneries? And he said, yes, don't worry. So he gave me the letter. I was the most happy person ever. So again, I went back to all the monasteries. I knocked doors. Okay, it is the bishop's letter, but you don't have the access. And they slammed the door. And some of them, you again?
Still, they would slam the door in your face.
Yes, they still slammed the door into my face. And I said, but it's the bishop letter. But also, when I knock the doors, I have to wait a lot of time because the one who opens the door is not Mother Superior. So that lady goes and I said, okay, give me a second. The second becomes 1 hour. And I was out waiting the sun in front of my face. I was not suffering, but I was like being very patient because I said, no, of course, I have the letter of the bishop. I, of course, will have the access. So wait an hour. And then the nun who opens the little door, she said, Mother Superior says no. Why? So then she goes again back. She goes and asks her why. Then she comes back again because you don't have the access because we have our rules and you can't go in. And then I said, but then to whom I should ask permission because this is the Bishop of Puebla. Come on. So again goes and come back. And then she told me to the Pope. And I said, what?
Wow.
And I said, no, this is not possible. And then I was like, really, I said, if I have to kneel and see the Guadalupe Virgin, because this is the Virgin that everybody bless, I will do it. What can I do? So then a friend of mine told me, no, come to this monastery. They were the Conceptionists and they were all in blue. It's beautiful how they dress. So I knocked the doors and okay, I have the contact of this person because he told me that you are very accessible. No, Marcelita, you don't have the permission. And suddenly, Jill, a light comes into me really because at the age of 6 months, I had appendicitis. And in those days, there was nothing to do. The doctors told my parents, it's very risky. I'm not going to do this. because she can die. And they told me that I was all day long, like 3 days, crying and crying. And also the doctor says, just wait for the miracle. And guess what? My mom pray. She uses to live in front of the Conceptionist church in those days. So she went to the Conceptionist and she told her, save her. So if I was safe, my mom promised that I was going to be wearing blue. And I have little photographs in color. I am blue all the time. And then this came into my memories when the nun was telling me, no, you don't have the access. I'm very sorry. And I said, guess what? I am a miracle of your virgin. And I told them the story. And then, really, Marcelita, come in, come to see the Virgin. And then the Mother Superior was telling everybody, come, she's a miracle of the Conceptionist Virgin. And she took me directly to the chapel. And they start to lean down in front of me. And I said, oh, what's going on?
The power of miracles.
It was a miracle because I was really desperate. And they were so nice, very beautiful ladies. And okay, Marcelita, you're welcome. But they thought that I was a researcher. So suddenly they came to me bringing books, albums. And I said, why do you want to take photographs? We have many. And they were treasures. Suddenly I start to see the nuns being photographed in the 19th century with beautiful ornaments and crowns. And I was like, what? Really beautiful. I mean, of course, they were like 4x5 cameras or 8x10s. And the paper was the perfect quality and they were in perfect shape. And then I told them, and where are your photographs? Show me. No, we don't have. You don't? I can photograph you like them. Really? Yes, of course I can. And they say, okay, Jill, I just took my car, drive as soon as I can to Oaxaca, as fast, came here, take all my lighting gear, flashes, strolls, backgrounds, whatever. Came back next day and I set studio in the garage of the monastery. And then I said, and do you have these images of baby Jesus? Yes, of course. And they have like beautiful antiques. So they helped me to set everything. I was asking for the table. They have the same table for years and the rocks in the floor and everything. And I said, thank you. This was really a miracle, Jill. So then I have the access. And of course, that day, I just processed very fast. I went to the lab, print them like in 8x10s, and immediately I knock the door and I bring them because that was the way they trust me.
Right.
So I just give them the set and they were, oh, beautiful. And that's how I have the access, not in all of them because they really have their own rules and the access was denied. But at the end, I make a very important to me and I think to the culture of Mexico for the history of the nuns, because in the past there were 2,000 inhabitants. Now they are 12.
Whoa.
The most are 20 or 25. So I think they are being extincted. They will fight, but they are being reduced. Okay?
Right. So once you gained access to the first monastery, did that allow you to get access to other convents as well?
No, it was not easy. So what I rather do is stay with the Conceptionist. And another thing that happened is that one of those nuns was going to celebrate the 25th anniversary of being a professed nun and learning about how is to become a nun, because my brain was thinking, oh no, these are spinster women. They are there because boyfriend abandoned them. Okay, but that's not correct. I was making a mistake of my way of thinking, because to become a nun, at least a professed nun, they have to study a lot. They study philosophy, theology, and it takes 7 to 8 to 9 years to be a professed nun. So this nun was celebrating the 25th anniversary plus like 8 years. So all her life. So I asked her, can I be your photographer? Yes, of course. Okay, so that was the way I have the access to the other monasteries because of her. So I photographed that one, and it was beautiful. Everything was a surprise because I didn't know anything about the cloister nuns, because my father was a free thinker. I mean, I used to have the Catholic religion by osmosis. So it was a surprise for me to learn about how they do everything, how they pray. They pray 5 times in a day. So anyway, so that's the way I have the access. And I said, okay, I'm gonna be your photography godmother. Okay, perfect. So sometimes they call me, how are you, godmother?
So how much time would you spend in the monastery for like a photo session? Would you spend the night there? Would it just be a daytime occurrence?
Yes, mostly it was daytime, but sometimes I stayed to sleep there because they have rooms that they receive like candidates. They call them postulants. So I stayed in those rooms, and I remember to ask them, at what time are you going to be waiting up? So I can follow everything during that day. And they said, 6 in the morning. Okay. So I just bring the camera and go down. And at 6 in the morning, they were perfectly well dressed, all clean, beautiful, and started to sing. And after that, they do the duties for the day. And yes, I used to stay longer with them and live there for 5 days.
Oh, wow. Wow. So many of your pictures of the nuns, their faces are obscured. Did you do that purposely so that they would be unidentifiable? Or were there other reasons for that?
Only because to respect them at the beginning, these ladies, when they get into the cloister, they don't have permission to go out. So at the beginning, I try not to show their faces. In a way, they are not obscure, they are hiding. For example, I have a photograph where the nun is ironing because to support themselves, they do many things. So she was ironing with linen. So when she was like raising the piece of cloth,
Right.
that's when I photograph her. I am waiting and waiting until I can see that they are cloistered, because that was the way I was thinking. I have to show that they are cloistered. Okay. There is another one that she's running with a big bouquet of flowers, and she's hiding, because she's carrying it.
So you use the idea of cloistering as a conceptual tool in composing the pictures.
Yes.
So did you find there to be differences between the older generation and the younger nuns in terms of their being willing to be photographed?
Yes, a lot. Yes. Well, I listened to the stories of the nuns. It's very interesting because in the past, they even can't see each other. In the past, they used to eat on the floor. No speaking. In the past, they used to wear a black veil also on their faces. So I was speaking to a nun from the past. She's still alive, but she was telling me, no, no, no. I mean, we can't even see each other. It was forbidden to have mirrors, for example.
Wow.
Yes, no mirrors. All the time is silence. So this nun told me that when they finish eating, of course, they have these silver trays, eating on the floor with silver trays, right? So she uses her habit to clean the tray very strongly so she can see her reflection. Amazing, right?
Oh.
And then I learned that the Vatican changed the rules because they told me that the service was given by the priest in Latin first. And then he was doing the service facing towards the main altar. So in the 70s, they changed the rules. So now the priest can see the people. And then the nuns also changed rules to do not eat on the floor and to not use the veil covering all your face. So it changes. But if you come to the 21st century, because that's what I do, the Catholic cloistered nuns of Mexico in the 21st century. And that is why, Jill, I decided to do color. First of all, I was thinking doing black and white and do the film. But when I went into the conceptionist and everything was bright blue, I said, wow, no, I having a mistake because I was thinking that these places were very dark and pale colors and all black and white. I don't know. I was thinking so differently. To me, it was every day a surprise. Something that I was not expecting happened. So that's why I decided to take the color.
What camera were you working with for this series?
You know, as the time passes, I really want to be as light as possible. When the nuns gave me the access, I used to bring the Nikon, but you know, these places are really very quiet. So just pushing the shutter, it was like a scandal. So I tried to find out which camera was not noisy. So I do the Sony. It's the RX, which was beautiful. I love it because it was quiet and I can walk everywhere and the camera is very comfortable. It's the only lens that is fixed. It's very well crafted, that lens. So it was my favorite when I do the nuns. And then I discovered that you can do also film. So I make small videos from when the nuns were working. So I have a lot of videos, which I show some of them in the exhibition.
So once you finished the series, what did the nuns think of your pictures?
It was very nice because then the exhibition was coming. So I went with them, show all the pictures, and asked permission to them if I can display them in a museum. And one of my favorites is a nun that is facing towards a window. She's wearing a crown and it's in the bathroom. To me, it's a masterpiece because it's very difficult to have access into the bathroom. And then I show it to her and I said, Marcelita, why do you want to show the bathroom? Look how it's horrible. No, Mother Superior, this is very beautiful. I love it. Can you give me permission to show that? Yes, of course, but the bathroom, how come? So yes, I asked permission to them.
So they, in the final analysis, are happy with the pictures you took?
Yes, yes, they were very happy because at the end, I think they have a little bit of fear to have someone from the outside photographing their lives. But at the end, now, you know, also the difference is that now they need to have more candidates. So I was godmother of a nun that celebrated her 50th anniversary, and she's very brilliant. She's the historian of the female Dominicans in all America and in Spain. So she invited me, and of course, I was the godmother in photography. And then a young professed nun came into me and I said, Marcela, can you help me? It's because I need to make promotions or advertising about having more girls to the monastery, and I need some photographs. Can you help me? And I said, of course. So I went into all my files and I sent her a bunch because now they do Facebook, for example. They do the social media.
Oh, wow.
So that's a difference, a big difference.
Yeah. So they're learning from you and the pictures you've provided. They're learning how to become more contemporary.
Exactly. And some of them even do not know how to turn on a computer. She's the one, and her name is Sorcesi. And she said, oh, but I don't know how to make a video. And I said, I will show you. But she's learning to turn on a computer. But it's lovely. I really love them. They are beautiful.
Yeah. The pictures are wonderful. And there's so much joy in so many of the pictures, which is sort of surprising given the idea of being cloistered and tucked away from society.
Yes, and there's a nun that I photographed in a bike, but it's a still bike.
Right.
And then she was biking and she was telling me, yes, make me more photographs to show everyone that we do exercise and that we are not just spinsters abandoned by the husband or by the boyfriend. We work a lot and they have joy and they have a recess time. Mother Superior decided, depending on the energy she feels, because they have 1 hour of recess time every day. So sometimes they play cards, they play lottery, but the lottery is beautiful because it's a Catholic lottery with a lot of symbols. They do sports, they do volleyball or badminton.
They refer to it as recess?
Yes, that's the word. I think it is from 2 to 3 p.m. So they can take a break. Sometimes they see films, of course, related to like Santa Catarina de Siena or the one who founded the Discalced Carmelites. Yes, they have dresses because they work all day long. And also, what I learned, and that's another word that adds to the 21st century, is that they tell me, I am stressed. And I said, but why?
Whoa.
Yes, Marcela, I am very stressed because now they pay taxes. And I have to do the economy for the government because now they are included because they didn't exist for the government, but they made them pay taxes. So they say, I am stressed. And also, the ring on the bell sounds all day long. All day long, because they are also like psychologists. So people that can't afford to pay a psychologist, they ring the bell, and there are nuns, specialists, because they really learn, they have this education. So the person comes and she just listen, and then she just give them comfort and help them.
That's amazing. So, Marcela, it's been a really wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on the culture of Mexico with us and your insights on making pictures there. But before we go, we'd like to end with a visual questionnaire inspired by the TV show Inside the Actor's Studio. It's a short list of questions with one-sentence answers. So, Marcela Taboada, with all things being equal, what is your preference, black and white or color?
Black and white and film.
Yes. And which image orientation do you gravitate to more often? Horizontal, vertical, or square?
Horizontal and square. I think we see horizontal, right? Or that's my idea, but I don't like vertical. I love square and horizontal.
And what's your lens preference, prime or zoom?
Prime.
If you could only carry one lens, which would it be?
35.
Okay. And what's the most important thing you look for at the instant when you click the shutter?
Emotions. Emotions. When I teach, I tell my students, I can put you in the same room and it's going to be a different photograph. of everybody because our emotions are different. We are unique, okay? It's like a fingerprint. So,
right.
mhm.
What one photographer, living or dead, has influenced your work the most?
Master Henry Cartier-Bresson and Lartigue. I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, but Jacques Lartigue. I like his work because his photographs are the change of a century, and it's very joyful. Okay.
Yeah. I can see the relationship between his work and the pictures of the nuns for sure.
Thank you.
Other than photography, what profession or craft would you most like to explore?
A pianist. I love to play piano, which I don't do. I mean, I am a frustrated playing in the piano, but I like that. And what else? And teach children. I teach children, which I love because it's a miracle to them. I mean, they do the pinhole camera, and to see their faces and the surprises when they go into the dark room, because they can't even imagine. You know, we are living in a complete network world. Okay, you know what I mean? That's taking them to build by their own hands a camera. Very simple. I use a cylinder, no? And then to make photographs and then to go into the dark room and see the magic. I mean, it's priceless, priceless, priceless.
Yeah.
So yes, I maybe it reminds me, of course, coming back to this interview. Yes, it reminds my childhood, and to see their faces, it's beautiful. I mean, it's amazing because they are now plenty of cell phones and iPads or whatever. So yes, it's what I am doing now.
That's wonderful. So finally, in a single word, what is your biggest motivation for making pictures?
Humans.
That's wonderful.
Yes, humanity. And in this stage of my life, it's like giving back and have gratitude. Gratitude with the people.
That's beautiful. Are there any upcoming projects or plans that you can tell us about?
I have been photographing seriously 30 years. And you know what? I don't have any book published. So this year in the summer, I was having an exhibition with Manuel Álvarez Bravo, Graciela Iturbide, Flor Garduño, and myself. And I said, oh my goodness, all these people have a lot of book published. What about me? I don't have any book published. So I started to go to my favorite projects, and I am now doing the pre-edition of the books. And my favorite and the first one that I really decided to do is Women of Clay. And Women of Clay was a book that was going to be published, but for some reason, some karma, it didn't happen. The writer of this book is Elena Poniatowska. She is a very important writer. In fact, she has a very important book about Tina Modotti life. I mean, it's a must to read. So I took her to the village. She interviewed the women of Clay. It happened in the 2006. And then the book was unfortunately stopped. So I knocked doors to her, and guess what? She's 92 years old.
Wow.
And she's still active. She's still writing. She's still collaborating to newspapers. So I went immediately to see her in Mexico City.
And will you self-publish this book, or are you looking for a publisher?
Yes, I'm looking to the publisher that at the beginning happened. I'm not knocking doors yet until Elena has the text.
Right.
But it's the University of Texas Press.
Oh,
Yes, because they publish photographers in Mexico.
Right. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed that you can complete that that first book?
Yes, of course I will. Because, for me, it's more important to have a book published than an exhibition.
Right.
Because the exhibition is difficult, right? That people only see them 3 months and buy.
And besides exhibitions, where can listeners find out more about you and your work?
I don't do the social media for some reason. Sorry to say this, but I'd rather be more creative than doing Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. So I have my website.
Okay.
It's marcelataboada.com.
Great. Well, that will be in our show notes. And Marcela Taboada, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for the audience. Thank you for Mike, and thanks to BH Photo because I am a customer.
Yes, it's been great speaking with you today. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, we'd love to hear about it. Pull up this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, B&H's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a comment. While you're there, make sure that subscribe button is clicked for automatic updates about every episode release. You can also find us and drop us a line on the Explora blog, where we post photos from our guests along with the show notes. And if you're a fan of social media, please join us on Facebook at the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photos and comment about the show. I'm Jill Waterman, the podcast creative producer and host of this series. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein. Theme music for this series is composed by Gabriel Richards, and our executive producer is Richard Stevens. On behalf of us all, thank you so much for listening.